All right. Hello, everybody. This is Amir Alavi from the Riverside County Office of Education. Thank you all so much for joining us for our February Lunch and Learn. It's great to see you all and would like to also thank very much our partners and collaborators, Sherry Haney from the Butte County of Education and Wendy Hall from the Shasta County Office of Education, who will be our presenter today. And we're very, very grateful to have our friends from Shasta County presenting, and also Cecilia Leon from Attendance Works. Thank you all for joining us. We are actually recording this session, and just a reminder, and otherwise would love to pass it on to our good friend and colleague, Cecilia Leon, for any introductory statements, and then we will move on to our key presenters today.
Thank you, Amir, and such a pleasure to see everyone. I'm going to be very brief today. We are in the process of revising some of our communications materials for averting the spring slump and messaging around spring break. And so we will send that out as soon as it's done with all the copy editing directly via the listserv that Amir and our COE has. So you'll get that right away. So without further ado, I turn it back to you. Amir, you're muted.
All right. Thank you so much, Cecilia. I really appreciate that. And it's my pleasure to introduce our friend, Wendy Hall, who's the Director of Continuous Improvement and Support at the Shasta County Office of Education. Thank you so much, Wendy, first of all, for all of your collaboration with this event in general, and also for presenting today. It's great to have you with us.
Oh, Amir, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to see you. I look forward to the time we get to be in person again and see each other, and just appreciate this opportunity of a network of support where we can just jump on during lunch and learn. And if many of you, if you have not had a chance to eat, it's called a lunch and learn for a reason. So please feel free to snack, get something to drink. And as my team and I share our journey of learning with you, we hope that at the end,
I already scheduled his appointment for Friday.
And comments that because those questions, comments that you have for us help us learn in our journey. So I have a wonderful team with me today. I'm happy to share my screen, Amir. I don't see that lovely little arrow that allows me to share my screen. So if you mind making me a host or a co-host, I can do that, and then we can get started. I still don't see it, Amir. Well, like I said, if you need a chance to get a drink or something, you can go ahead and do that. Now I'm getting ready to share. And here we go. So that was quick. I hope you got it. Okay. All right, let me move this out of the way so that I can see you all at the same time. And everyone can see my screen okay? Fantastic, thank you. Okay. So as we were in the beginning, just kind of chatting about the opportunity to share with you all, is that this really is a story of how we have been working as a team across our county, a networking team, to improve our systems of support for our students and our families and our schools around attendance as the initial indicator, right? And then connecting into deeper systems. So that's what we're sharing with you today as a story. And I have a team with me, and each, as it comes to their portion, I'll just have them introduce themselves before they speak into their portion. But thankfully, I have a huge, amazing team, and some of them are with me today. So we're grateful to be here. So just to give you a little bit, a snapshot into our County. If you haven't had the pleasure of coming to Shasta County, we welcome you. It's beautiful. We are a very spread out county. As you can see, some of our teachers in our schools are about 90 miles apart from each other. So networking is really critical and important, and networking of our services and supports to our schools is critically important. You can see we have 25 districts, and the breakdown is there, what our districts look like. So we are very spread out in a very beautiful area, and we depend heavily on each other for supports and resources. A few years back, we had been looking at data and really diving into our data around chronic absenteeism, as many of you have. And what we discovered, as with many of you, I'm sure, is that we had a lot of areas for improvement. We had a lot of wonderful things that were going well, and we have some areas that we could definitely improve. One special note was that, we found that Shasta County, our chronic absenteeism rates were above the state average in all student groups. That caught our attention, right? And so when we look and we start to think about data, we wanted to rally as many people from our community as we possibly could. So we brought together members from our community, from our court systems, mental health, all our community partners that we could bring on board, administrators from all of our school systems, anyone that we could bring, volunteers to come in to start looking at the data to look for areas where we could improve. And I like this image here that we use a lot when thinking about our improvement journey, and that we knew that we had a vision for where we wanted our schools to be and our students to be. And we needed to get very clear on what our current reality is, because we knew that we had a lot of emotional tension and creative tension because we weren't where we wanted to be. And so we put our heads together with about 70 plus different individuals. We met, I think it was 5 or 6 times throughout a year at about 5.5 hours each day to just dive in and look at data and say what's currently happening and where can we improve. And this down here, we're all faced with it. We can either change reality or lower our vision. So we decided we're going to change our reality. We love this image. We throw it up a lot just to kind of preface this work, in that we jumped into this and we're flying a plane as we're building it. And as we learn more about ways to improve our system from the data that we're looking at, from our conversations that we're having, from our observations, and from going out of our bubble and scanning other areas, we modify our plane as we're flying it. Right? This is a nice graphic that shows the journey, the progression of interventions and supports when we have a family or a child that's struggling with attendance. So this just shows some of our key points to our process. So we really looked at our positive attendance messaging, and we started modeling after our Todd Rogers and Attendance Works with their key research points about how we message, turning families on immediately and having them connect. And so we took all of their research points of font size, wording, comprehension level, the overall structure of the letter, and we implemented that countywide. School attendance review teams. When I was able to go out and interview all of the model SARBs, that's what they had in common, was they had groups of people coming together on a regular basis and looking at actionable data. And then bringing them together to share what's working and what's struggling. Then we know that we needed to tie in our county partners, our community partners. So we committed to having quarterly check-ins where we would invite anyone who wanted to come to the call to share our data and to really brainstorm with, what do you see? What do you notice? What is something that we can try, and how can we all pull together? And then you can see the progression goes into more intense as we go into the tier 3s and 4s with county SARB, school attendance review boards, and then truancy court. But we knew it needed to look different, right? And we also knew that we needed to be aware of when that progression of interventions needed to stop, right? And making sure that we get the right families to the right interventions. And here's another way of looking at that, since we love pyramids, right? So a tier 1 is the universal support for everyone. Our tier 2, the SART teams, and then Community Connect, which is something one of my partners will go into depth with, and how we provide support to our schools when they need it. And then tier 3 for the families who are invited who need this level of support, the SARB, Targeted Case Manager, and Mental Health Services. So here's just a brief snap. We have 49 SART teams, school attendance review teams, and growing. And our goal really has been to increase the number of schools with SART teams refine our processes and routines that better inform our actions to stop that progression of absences, and ultimately increase the engagement and quality of life for our families. We know that our current situation in the last couple of years has really thrown kind of a challenging wrench in routines and processes. So allowing ourselves to have permission that it's okay if we don't have ideal routines yet. How can we improve them, and how do we keep moving forward? So this is what our SART team's learning process can look like, and what they're aiming for. And they're at variations on this, depending on what life's throwing them and what staff is set. But we're really working hard towards this. Their team, how frequently they're meeting, who they're meeting, a focused agenda for that short amount of time they're coming together, what data they're looking at, and how they're documenting that learning and next steps. And then identifying with that team who's going to connect with those families and determine root causes of the attendance challenges, and then connecting those families with the resources that they have accessible within their sphere of influence at their district or their site. And when they don't have those resources, or when the obstacles fall outside of the sphere of influence, then they can now have access to a community connector, a community connections to help get those outside services into the schools. And ultimately, what are we trying to accomplish and why? What do we need to do differently? And how will we know we're improving? And that leads us into improving our processes for actionable data, right? And twisting it and turning it to see what it tells us to guide our actions. So I'm going to introduce my friend and my partner, Sherry DePauli, who's going to talk a little bit about how we're improving our processes for actionable data. Sherry?
Yeah, so thank you, Wendy. So good afternoon, everybody. I'm Sherry, and I have the pleasure of working with Wendy and the rest of the team here at Shasta County Office. And my part today really is just, as Wendy, spoke to, and as you'll hear throughout our presentation, we are building this as we're going, and we're learning a lot. Our districts are learning a lot, and I'm just going to share a little bit about our data journey and kind of how this is kind of the how. How did we help our districts begin to build a system around looking at data in a regular way and have it be something that can be actionable for them? So I think this is probably familiar to all of you. So this was a wonderful pyramid that really this was what we want to have from our data. We want to be able to look at our students who are showing up in each of these three tiers. We want our schools to be able to identify who these students are, and then be able to react and dig in deeper on the reasons behind why our kids are showing up in some of these particular tiers. So this was a foundational part initially in this journey. And for those of you, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the great data tool that comes alongside this. So we began asking our districts, what systems are you using? Is there something you have in place? Some of them had A2A, some of our larger districts had some ways to gather data. And as Wendy showed in the map, we have a very rural county. We have very small districts. And so the capacity to do some of this work or the programs were more limited. And this is where this wonderful Attendance Works data tool came into play, which is of course a free resource that was available. And that was a starting place for us. And so we shared that with our SART teams and those that needed a little bit more. There was some one-on-one coaching with the schools to help them figure out how to get their data file out of Aries. So those of you that maybe haven't used it, it works alongside Aries. It's a file that's already built within Aries that districts then just can download and drop into a spreadsheet that again is available through Attendance Works. And with that, they see their data in a variety of ways. So one of the things Wendy mentioned previously was we're trying to also transition from a single number about chronic absenteeism. Let's begin to look at it in student groups. Which student groups are popping up? We know the connection that makes to our dashboard. So really kind of, again, helping them build a system and find ways to easily access some of these pieces. So again, that was the starting place. So once we started using that, some things that were popping up were ways to begin to look at the system as a whole, because what that data tool will give you will be a snapshot in time from whenever you download. So if we were to download a data file, we could then see how our various student groups are performing, how our grade levels are performing. We would have student names as well. And so we began then to want, some questions were popping up, which was great, which is what data will lead us to do. We're looking at data, we then have other questions. What else do we want to know? What do we want to begin to track? And we wanted beyond that data tool to then go maybe a little bit higher. Let's take the 10,000 foot view and start to begin to pull some of this data out of attendance works and to track this throughout the year. So we can see now over time what is happening. So this is just a screenshot using those definite, defined categories of chronic absenteeism, again, from attendance work. And then the next screen will show you what this tool will do. So as we begin to then drop students in, we're developing a heat map over the course of the year. And we can begin to see a trajectory of how these kids are doing. So if we take just the first one as an example, this would have been a kindergartner that remains nameless. And we just started inserting their chronic absenteeism rates for September. And this first one is an example, of course, of a student who doesn't have an issue. But if we look underneath that one, it will color code according to the various tiers. So again, just a way to easily have a school site be able to identify in a quick manner what is happening. And then as you enter these numbers in, again, it's conditional formatted and a trend line will begin to develop. So again, do we need to intervene? And what is happening just beyond the snapshot in time, but through the course of the year. So this was just one example of taking the attendance works tool and building upon some of the data that we were already getting out of that. We go to the next slide. So here we're actually seeing a screenshot in the lower right-hand side of the attendance work tool itself, where it will give you your student names, and then you can select the different absent type that you would like. And so we would have all of our students listed here. And one way that we then again started using some of this data would be to take out of this tool, let's say, our at-risk kids, and to begin to chart over the course of the year how many students are showing up in this category, and then try some interventions. So we have then a graph here that's again a template. It's easy for districts to start adding just their raw numbers from the attendance work data tool we see here. So again, it's not requiring anything more from them. And then let's notate what happens, because part of improvement is we want to know what is working within our system, where we're starting to see a change, and maybe where what we're trying isn't working. So just a way to begin to monitor and notate what has happened. So and this is just fictitious data here, but in an example, you might be able to notate, well, we implemented trying phone calls. So we wanted to see if that impacted our data. And so in this example, it did. It started bringing down the number of students who were at risk. Next slide, I believe, is the same example, only this time now we're looking at particular student groups. So again, pulling data off of this attendance works tool, we took some percentages off here, and then we would plug it in to begin to monitor a student group who might be at risk, or either all of our students. It had different uses, but again, just when we get to June and we wrap up our school year, there shouldn't be any surprises when the dashboard rolls out in the fall. We should be monitoring this throughout the year. So again, just trying to help our districts build a system that might work for them to be able to track student names, how they're performing, as well as student groups. And this is just another example of a template to be able to track, in this example, American Indian students. And then I think just, thinking about that, but also that idea that I mentioned around we shouldn't have surprises when our dashboard comes out. So how can we use this data to connect to DA work, and how can we connect it to the 5x5 grids, and how can we kind of bring all those pieces together. So this was just another template that put together around attendance, suspension, etc., where the districts could pull their chronic absenteeism rates, and that would be what you see in the upper left. Insert that number, and then it auto-populates for them in this chart so they could see. They in their LCAPs, they have goals on what they would want their chronic absenteeism rate to be. So this is just, again, showing them as they go how close they are to meeting their goal, and do we need to make a change or not. And then also keep in mind that 5x5. So as we move forward, you can see on the 5x5 there, what is going to be red, what percentages will give you orange, etc. So let's help them be very mindful of those. We all know they are, but just trying to kind of bring all those pieces together for them in a way that is creating a system that's doable, maintainable, helping them build a system.
A big discount.
So with that, I believe I'm handing it off to Joy.
Yes, it's my turn. My name is Joy Garcia, and I get the pleasure of being with you today and to talk about the Next Step Community Connect. Okay, so going back to what Wendy and both Sherry said, once we kind of have these pieces together, right? We got our groups together. We talked about how we're going to work on these things collaboratively and consistently. And then we have this data where now we're not just kind of having these surprises like Sherry's talking about, or we don't really know that a kid's absent until they're chronically absent. We have the tools now to be able to kind of go to the next step in our work here. Okay, so this is what we decided to do. We had all of the work that through attendance work, we're following best practices, we're doing all of the things that we know work. And then we know that these families who have students who are really struggling with attendance oftentimes have multiple things going on. It's not just things that are within the sphere of influence of their school. So how might we be able to get additional supports to partner with schools to be able to really kind of start chipping away at that, underneath the water parts of an iceberg? And so what we put together is Community Connect, and it's based on the back or the infrastructure of a system that we already have, which many of you have in your counties, which is called Help Me Grow. So what we did is we had schools refer students once they started to be worried about their attendance. So if they were using the tools that Sherry had been helping them with, we didn't have to wait until they were on the red. We could start to see those, we could start to see that conditional formatting, and we could start to refer these students to Community Connect. When they referred them to Community Connect, we would automatically at Community Connect do a couple things to try to connect with the family. We would snail mail them, we would email them, we would, if the school had permission, we would text them, we would call them. And so we were able to reach out to the family and say to them, hey, we got this referral. We're reaching out to you to see if there's anything that you might need help with, that we might be able to support you with. And one of the things that you see in this slide over here to the left is one of the things that people are really surprised about is we don't have some sort of unbelievable database system that we bought into. We use Google tools to the nth degree. So we just use a Google form for the referral from schools. We use add-on onto the Google sheet that's made from those Google forms called Autocrat to do kind of this beautiful mail merge stuff that automatically sends out these emails and makes the mail that we're going to send. And we have queries and those sorts of things on Google Sheets so we can share information back and forth with the referring school. So we don't have any sort of magical device other than just using Google to the best of our ability. Okay, so now we've reached out to all of these families, And we had surprising results. So we'll tell you a little bit about what happened for us in 20 and 21. If you can believe it, schools took us up on our offer. What we really like to think about is that the school is doing everything that they need to within their sphere of influence to help with attendance for these students that are being referred. And in our community, we kind of hit that sweet spot where there's quite a bit of services and supports in our community, even though we're relatively small and rural. But our community-based partners oftentimes really have struggles of getting families and students connected to those services. So what we said is that Community Connect is leaving all the roads that are already available there into community-based services if our students and their families are finding them fantastic. But Community Connect is making a highway. We're going to put I-5 through here to be able to get those families connected to those community-based resources. And our schools referred 600 students the first year. So we weren't really sure whether they would take us up on our offer, but it's like having one of those dinner parties where your spouse is asking you if you cooked enough food and then you're saying yes until everybody comes. So it was one of those kinds of things like, okay, we gotta, somebody's gotta bring some chips. So we put all hands on deck and we went for it. And here's who we served. Here's who was referred. At first, we were a little worried about, between the breakup between male and female, but we saw a pretty equal breakdown there of those. We had referrals across the grade span from elementary to high school. This language, the primary language at home is not surprising for Shasta County, but then we also looked at student groups about if they had IEPs, and here's some of the highest student groups that were referred to us: students with disabilities, Native American students, and homeless students. Okay. So we reached out, and we reached out at a time of COVID when some of these families, the school hadn't even heard from them at all. And we were able to connect with 75% of the families that were referred to us, which we think is pretty awesome. And so you saw the ways that we reached out to them, but 75% of those 600 families we were able to connect with and just say, hey, we're here. The student was referred because of some attendance worries, but we're here to support you and your family. What kinds of things do you need? And we're going to help connect you to that. And if you can believe it, 447 of those families took us up on it, which we think that's the most amazing number right there, is so many people said, yes, we do need some help. And this is what we would like help connecting to. Now, we can't magically make up services that don't exist in our community. For example, our community, like many communities in California, really struggle with affordable housing, for example. But if it exists in our community, we're sure going to try to get them connected with it. Okay. So we were able to connect them to many resources in our community. So 41% of the, it ultimately ended up that 41% of those 600 students and their families were connected to at least one or more services and supports in our community. Okay. And that resulted in some better attendance rates, if you could believe it. We know this kind of social work role that isn't necessarily quick results or even results that we might see this year or the next. But we did see some results right away that over 55% of those students did have improved attendance after they had been, after engagement with Community Connect. Here's the types of things that they talked about, the types of things that those families needed. And I'm sure it's no surprise to many of you who work with students and families, but we saw at the very beginning, we saw a big need of help around education. I don't know how to connect to online learning, some of those things. We need help, we need a computer, we don't have access to internet, those sorts of things. But really then we kind of leveled out around behavioral and mental health services was a big one that families needed access to. And of course, basic needs. At the beginning of the pandemic, we were helping people figure out how to apply for unemployment, and people needing housing and electricity bills or subsidies or all kinds of things that we've helped them connect with in our community. Okay. Now, Let's go back to that picture that we always show. You know, we're always kind of adding and tweaking that plane. So let's look at what we added this year, because, you know, we figured out if we're going to have more people coming to the party than we decided, then we're just going to roll with it, and we're just going to buy as many bags of chips as we can figure out how to buy and feed everybody. And so this is what we this is kind of the additions after that really great first launch year. So we were able to apply for a community school grant on behalf of all of the 25 districts that that are a part of being able to refer to Community Connect through this work. And we added, in addition to attendance, schools can also refer for worries around behavior. We also have partnered with our Health and Human Services Department and have received Mental Health Services Act funding to be able to keep Community Connect going and being able to get services for the students and their families. And we have MHSSA dollars that are also helping us with some special programs for students that are referred from community day schools or alternative ed. And then we're also being able to track now this year the work that we're doing around early childhood referrals. So this isn't just K through 12, we're able to go all the way down into our preschools. And we know that kind of the habits that start there tend to last. Okay. So what you see here is it's really kind of this funnel that comes to the same place, right? So we have this work that happens in attendance and about SART teams and the way that they work and the way that they use the data, and then they're able to refer kiddos in, and it comes in through this attendance line into the funnel. And equally so, behavior has its own systems with student study teams and those sorts of things, and it also comes into the funnel. But ultimately, Community Connect is doing the same thing for those families, regardless of whether they're coming with attendance issues or behavior issues. We're working with families, seeing what they need, helping them make a plan, and helping empower them, and kind of using a closed referral, just social work 101 type work to be able to help them get what they need. Here's where you can see that we started. So we started out with an unbelievable person that you're just about going to hear, April Matthews, just holding it all together and taking care of all the calls, everything that was happening with Community Connect. And then it was working so well that we wanted kind of that more intensive work at the top of the pyramid, using targeted case management for kids that that made it all the way to SARB. And then this year, through some of the additional funding, just the great results that we've had with this work, we've been able then now to have 3 case managers and 2 care coordinators. And then now we have 2 people providing targeted case management for SARB. So we're keeping the quality up, we're keeping engagement rates high. And we're being able to do this work, this additional work, to be able to really help students and their families be able to chip away at things in their life that really affect their attendance. So I think now I think the next slide. Oh no, let's keep going. I'll hurry up. So here's the data that we have from August to January that you can see so far. We have a total already this year of 421 referrals. You can see a breakdown between 187 of those are for attendance. Then you see the behavior ones. When you see this other, we also receive referrals for students that are homeless, and also students where some COVID issues are occurring. But you can see that our contact rate is staying really high. We've been able to connect with 73% of those referrals. And you see that this year our engagement is even higher. And so 70% of those families that we're able to connect with are saying, yeah, well, let's make a plan and let's get connected to some other services. So we're really excited about that. You can start to see the referrals by month. This actually is similar to what we see last year. We kind of start to see this, you know, it goes down a little bit by the holidays, and then we'll really start to see it go up by February. So these are just kind of the trends that we see in referrals here. And then the different color lines are just based on what type of referral it is. And just last month, I believe, we decided to break this data down even farther. So we have this infographic that just gets updated that is shared with all of the districts that refer, so they can just kind of see overall county-wide what happens. But now what we've done is we have enough data, and the way we collect it, we're able to have a breakdown by district, and you can kind of see where we made a dashboard for them so they could see who they referred and what the connection rate has been, and a breakdown you can see. So a superintendent might be able to see which schools are referring and which ones aren't, and what's happening for their students. And of course, we just focus for a second, right there on that middle creamy tier 2 layer centered in between SARB, targeted case management, but we have the bottom covered as well. And one of the major pieces that we have is a partnership with 211, which is where a lot of our referral database comes from, is based on the back of this. And so we were able to work with our 211 partner, United Way, and they made this really awesome thing called a school kit. So what we're really working on is that part of that universal layer, that first part of Community Connect, are those families that are able to just reach out for themselves, to call 211 and to be able to gain the stuff that they need on their own whenever they need it right then, rather than having to be referred. So if you think about it, for Community Connect, we really go from kind of this universal 211's here, you can contact it whenever you want to get the help that you need. If that doesn't work, then a student may be referred to us, and we'll reach out to you and we'll follow up with you and help make sure that those connections are made in that tier 2. And then if you end up still at SARB in terms of attendance, then even still there, we'll make sure that you're connected to the resources that you need through targeted case management. So that's our multi-tiered system of support, by being able to use our community-based services and supports to add to the things that are happening at school for those students. And now is the time that I actually hand it over to April Matthews.
Thank you so much. And an update to the referrals as of today, it's so crazy that last year we did receive exactly 600 Community Connect referrals, not 599, not 601. It just sounds so fake. So I do like to just call out, it was a real number. And today, as of this morning, we hit our 500 mark. So another just milestone, I feel that this year we've already received that many. So like I mentioned, my name is April Matthews, and I am with the Shasta County Office of Education. I was that case manager 2 years ago that had a lot of those referrals that were coming in, and you can see how much we've grown, which has been so exciting, because that really gives us the opportunity to drill down into the data, to really step back and look at how these referrals are coming in and what we can do to support the school. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the improvement to the SARB process. Wendy already did a great job talking about how all of the partners came together to really look at this restructuring. And so we are going to jump right into SARB. So in that restructuring process, just to kind of boil it down a little bit, in our county, there were 7 panels operating their own SARBs throughout Shasta County, and we were able to get that down to 4 panels and being very grade specific. So that way we're really able to kind of hone in those panels, the community members, and all of that around those different SARBs that were taking place. One of the things that has also been identified, oh, Wendy, I think you went ahead. There we go, sorry. Is including siblings at the same SARB if it's applicable, because the grades being really separate, we could see that there might have been an elementary student that was being sent to SARB, but yet the high schooler that's in the same family was also about ready to be sent to SARB. So being very mindful and putting a lot of work into the investigation process, like, is that student coming to SARB? Can we do it at the same time, just for ease of the family, right? We don't want them to have to come 1 week and then come 2 weeks later. And coincidentally, our families actually really care. 2 weeks ago, we had a SARB, and one of the siblings was SARBed. And the mom was, I don't want to use the word upset, but really strongly questioned why we cared about that kiddo and not her other son that wasn't coming to school either. And so for that parent to acknowledge that was huge. to say, how come you're bringing me here? But what about my other kid? Like, don't you care? Because she really actually felt supported during that SARB process, which is huge. Another gap is calling the district of residence. So if that outcome of that SARB was that that student needs to go to the district of residence, making that phone call, letting them know that this kiddo's on their way, and to be expecting that student. Sending out calendar invites to the schools to monitor that process, right, or progress, right? To celebrate if these students are coming to school. It's really about the celebration, but of course, if there's gaps, trying to figure out why those gaps are happening in the attendance. We're also looking at referring those students to Community Connect before going to SARB. So it's not just about now that you've been SARBed, we're going to give you some support, but before they get to that point. And those case managers that have been talking with the families before SARB, they're able to give them a call beforehand and say, do you need any support? This is what it's going to look like. When you walk in the door, this is what you're going to see, feel, hear, all of that, to start to even take away some of that stress, because SARB sounds scary and it can be very, very intimidating for our families. So those Community Connect case managers calling the families ahead of time and saying, this is your opportunity to talk about the struggles that you've been having in your home. Be prepared to talk about why the attendance is where it's at, right? Giving them that heads up. And then of course, offering that case management as support post-SARB. Not every family gets that support. It really comes down to the panel and the recommendations that they want to make, but those case managers are there to make a direct introduction to that family and start immediately connecting with them. And of course, it's all about the little things, right? In this restructuring, we're able to step back and say, gosh, as a parent, let's walk through the door. Actually, Amir, I had a great privilege of listening to a training that you gave at the beginning of the year. And just really thinking about what SARB looks like from a parent's eyes. So starting off with a welcome sign, right? Like, let's make this a friendly event. Again, it sounds scary, right? But let's be welcoming, let's be kind. We also noticed that as part of that SARB process, there is a script, right? It's very scripted on what has to be said, but not everybody is an audible learner, right? So how important it was for us to print up those scripts and the steps that we're gonna have happen and have them laminated. And we have them outside of the SARB room. And then we also have them on the tables when the families come in. So that way they could follow along and know exactly what's going to be said and see where they're going to have that opportunity to share. Having the contact information on a projector screen really big, so that way they can confirm their contact information, right? And it's very friendly and welcoming. Having that circular setup, right? We don't want to put them in the hot seat. We're all in the hot seat together, right? We're just all around as a tribe to support this family. There has been times families have not shown up. Surprise, surprise. But that doesn't mean that they're free from not getting the support and love from us. So we even call them while we're at SARB during that time if they don't show up, and put them on speaker and let them know, hey, we're here for you. We want to support you, and we're moving forward, and your voice is so important to us. We're going to give you a call and try to help get your thoughts and support during this. We have books and coloring supplies for when the littles come to the SARB meetings to help them, feel as they're part of that meeting and give them something to do, right? We also have music playing outside of the room, and a strong trained panel from multiple institutions that we'll talk about in just a second. So here we are, the SARB panel, right? We have folks representing multiple different places. We have community-based organizations, we have SELPA, we have school administrators on the board, SCOE, First 5 Shasta, probation, children's services, the Children's Legacy Center. We have so many folks offering so many different perspectives. In fact, mentioning probation, it was when the probation officer was talking to that one mom I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, That mom felt so supported from that probation officer. That's when she mentioned, man, how come my other son wasn't brought here too? So I just as a sharing how impactful these members can be. I already mentioned that the Community Connect Care coordinators reach out to the families and let them know what to expect, but I'm highlighting that again because it is so important. I cannot tell you how much those families appreciate getting that extra phone call and a reminder, right? But just this is what to expect. We also have those case managers that sit on the panel, and if case management is recommended, they're right there to connect with the family right after SARB and say, when's a good time? Is this phone number okay for me to text? Would you like to meet me here at your home, at Starbucks, right? They're able to really just make that connection. And last year we had one case manager. This year we do have two. So that has been exciting. And we mentioned case management. I wanted to throw this in there because what does that mean, right? It just sounds like, okay, when I say the word case management, what we have are mental health clinicians that are acting as case managers. They, once assigned, they reach out to the family, they complete an assessment, work on goal planning. They're providing that support and resources and following up on those resources, looking at barriers that that family might have had to get connected to those resources. They're working with the schools and attendance and monitoring their attendance, right? Because we're looking at, are there things happening? Is the family might be telling us that everything's okay, but their student hasn't gone to school in the last week and a half. We want to know because we want to be able to reach back out and have that conversation with the family and also celebrate when they are going to school. We have had a couple of kids in the last few weeks attend school for the first time that have not attended school all year long. So, I mean, this is huge, right? We also work with the whole family. It's not just about the one student and the parent, it's about the entire family because we know that those other kiddos in the home, it's all related, right? This is voluntary. We also do have some funds because of some grants that we've received to be able to provide some supports, whether or not it's that utility bill, whether or not it's a new pair of shoes or a jacket during the winter months, pretending that we got rain, but that's very important. And I put, oh, Wendy, real quick, so sorry, right in the middle, I missed it, but this one's huge. We help with that support and communication with the school. Not all of our families have had the most romantic relationships and these beautiful relationships with schools. I don't know how else to say that, right? But that hasn't always been the case, whether or not it's from their own experiences or their experiences with their students. But we're able to oftentimes act as a bridge between the parent and that school. So trying to help them find the words and then of course, empower them to have those conversations with the school when needed. Okay, now you can go ahead, sorry. So how long do we hang out in their lives? I would love for us to be there forever, but looking at this model, really the whole hopes was that we would be there for about 3 months. We have many families that have gone way past this 3-month marker. It's not, everything looks good on paper, right? But the reality is that these families, it's not just within a month, things are going to be perfectly smooth and these kids are going to be going to school. They might need some more, but ideally we have the SARB hearing and within that first month, we're doing weekly calls and that attendance tracking. We hope by the second month, that's bi-weekly calls with the families. And then that third month is a final check-in. But again, the reality is it's going to ebb and flow. By the second month, the families might need us 18 times, to talk to us 18 times that month. Maybe that third month it might be a little bit more, but ultimately the family and the engagement, it really is based on what their needs are. As looking at the case management last year, out of all of the families that were offered case management, 100% accepted. And it's on the same trend right now. So we do have to be very mindful about the ones, not every single student is being recommended to have case management, but so far all of the ones that have been offered have accepted. So last year, what does this look like? So the case management attendance percentage pre-SARB. So out of all of those that had the support of a case manager, 89% increased attendance pre-SARB to post-SARB. So just to be able to see how much of an increased attendance that they had, right? Like I said, we have some students that are attending school now that had never attended school. So that's a huge improvement. I'm not a data person, or a numbers person, but I really feel like that's significant. So 43%, so above 90% for attendance. So, okay, of the 43% pre-SARB average attendance rate was 61%. Again, really honing in on the increase of attendance from those that were chronically absent to now, right? It's just huge. Sorry. And I wanted to throw this quote in there, and I actually received another one yesterday that's a little better. So I'm going to pull the other one up, but this one cracks me up. Our case manager last year, she's like, this is what my mom just sent me. I thought SARB was going to suck, and then I got you, right? That speaks volumes as far as that case management. But yesterday she got another text from a parent that she was providing services to. And so she actually screenshotted the text message and sent it to me. And the mom said, I am really very grateful I have you in my corner because I have no clue what I would be doing. I appreciate all you have done for me and my children. Thank you so much. That one is that's a little sweeter than this one, but both I think mean the same thing, right? So anyways, thank you so much for letting me share.
Thank you so much. Okay, I don't know if you can just feel our energy, but you know, we do a lot of hope work and talking about hope, and we nurture hope by celebrating the small successes, right? And so we have a lot of small successes, and so we're very excited about this work, and we are still building the plane and learning a lot, and looking forward to the positive impact. So we want to thank you so much for your time and allowing us to share our journey. I want to also say hello to our extremely important partner that we couldn't do any of this. It's our superintendent of schools, Judy Flores, is on the call with us. She's the reason that this got started, and she's with her connections and pulling everybody together and just having that vision to have the real conversations from various perspectives and seeing that in order to support our families and our schools, it has to be a community event. It has to be all hands on deck. And so I just thank her, and she's on here. So Judy, thank you for being on here with us. Okay, so that was what we had to share today, Amir.
Wow, team, what an amazing presentation, but more importantly, what an incredible program you put together. And thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I'm so glad that we've got this one on videotape. And so our friends who are attending today and participating, please feel free to ask questions or comments while we have our wonderful team with us here today.
Just real quick, will we be able to get a copy of the recording if we needed to go back over anything, or?
Yes, we will send out to all the participants on our list the link to the recording. If you would kindly put your link in the chat box, or you can send it to me directly. I would be more than happy to send this to you, but it will all be featured on our website and most likely on other websites for our county office partners.
Okay, perfect.
Access. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Anybody else? Any questions for our team?
Mayor, this is Sherry. I just have a question. Fantastic. Every time I hear that presentation, I just always so excited and thinking, how do we do this here? But My question is, how do you then support your sites when they're identifying those systemic barriers? So great support of the families and students, but I'm just wondering, supporting schools around the system barriers that we find.
So that's a great question, Sherry. Part of it is the transparency in our communication. So we're constantly trying to share the data with them so that we're able to say, what do we see and we notice? So we're not just telling them, oh, this is what we're seeing, this is what we're seeing, but actually sharing the data to say, based on the referrals that you're sharing with us and us getting to what the family is saying the root causes are, here's what we have, and then we share it, and then they start to reflect upon their own systems that they have control over and where they're maybe struggling with how to meet those needs before it gets to the level that it's at. So it's really just that constant awareness and sharing of the current data, and then having them be able to have the time to reflect and say, okay, what do we have control over within our system to try to head that off before it even gets to that level. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's something that we're really working hard on, is that open communication, reflective loop of communication. And then when they don't know, we have relationships enough that they'll reach out to say, we have no idea how to do this within our system. So that then we reach out to our community partners and say, okay, our school X is struggling with this. Do we have any supports we can bring straight to the campus so that it's part of their school life? So it's, like I said, that's something that we're just continuously learning. Rest of my team, anything need to add?
Thank you, Wendy.
It's also helpful when we can bring them together, or when we can share the data so that they can see that they're not the only ones with that problem. So, and maybe having that conversation to where they can say, oh, we feel like we've tried everything. But then when they hear that another school maybe tried just a similar thing, but a slight tweak to it, they can then try that and maybe see a difference. So that network of support sometimes helps as well.
Awesome. Team, I have a question for you, a couple actually, but you mentioned the activity of your SART teams at your school site coming together. Could you kindly share with us if you were to give some recommendations to sites putting teams together, what advice would you have for them? And what are some things that you've seen your SART teams do that sort of stand out that we might want to try to emulate elsewhere?
First, off the top of my head, that I've heard a lot of people say with SART, so it's nothing new, is that think very carefully about who's on your SART team. So really have it be reflective of all parts of your system. So be diverse, and have it be people that have a passion for the work, and that can, no matter when barriers are thrown, they have a passion for it, so they're going to stick with it. So that's first and foremost. Second is it's been helpful to give them ideas of what their agendas can look like when they come together, because oftentimes they are coming from different places and spaces. They're coming right after school, right before school, during a common time, and their brains are all over the place. So what does that really quick 30-minute, 45-minute, hour, whatever block of time they have, what can that look like so that they're very efficient in their conversations? And when they leave that conversation, they each feel like they have an action that they have some control over, and then what they're going to bring back to the next meeting. So it's that continual learning. So it feels like it has purpose to it. And then the just making sure that they know who to contact with whatever the question may be. There is no silly question. You're not wasting anyone's time. No one's going to judge whatever you need help with. If you need help with data, Sherry DePauli is your person. And she works really hard to build relationships with the school sites in a lot of different ways so that they're not intimidated to reach out to say, I need help. Joy and April, like, you sense their energy, right? I mean, so bringing them on board when I'm school face fronting, Sherry and I bring on board with me Joy and April, who are the community partners piece, so that they can have conversations with those teams. So now they have relationships. So it's not just them always funneling through me. They know they can go straight to other people in the system. Those are my thoughts.
Fantastic recommendations. Anybody else have any questions for our team here?
I just have a compliment. I love the way you were very ingenious in taking free available resources and putting them together coherently into a system. That was so cool. Terrence was asking me about the Aries download, and I would suggest, Terrence, that you just go straight to Joy and have a conversation.
Fantastic. One other question that comes to mind, team. You were talking about sort of at your SARBs, the sort of 3-month plan that you have, although sometimes it goes longer depending on the family's need, but you start by more intensive check-ins and gradually phase off. How do you find that kind of a disciplined follow-up routine after SARBs has worked for you? How much has it improved your general productivity at SARB?
I think that it's really been helpful to have a format to try to attempt to follow, right? Like to have that idea of let's try to do this work with the family at this, but it's not prescribed. I feel like the allowance that we're having working with families to increase in the intensity and back down to help match where they're at has been really important and crucial in that engagement with the family, right? When we're not saying, I have to come here every week to talk to you, but we are coming here as the family needs and wants and is responsive. Again, we have mental health clinicians that are very, very skilled in working with these families that know how to have that engagement and communication with them to meet them where they're at and build from there. It's been super, super successful. And again, we also want to be mindful that we don't have every single family that comes in. We don't have the capacity to provide that case management support to everybody. So it also gives us some accountability of like, okay, if a family is not as engaged, when do we draw that line? So it does also kind of help us on that end as well. I hope that answered your question. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, you all, we're coming up on our time here. Thank you so much for your wonderful presentation to our Shasta team. And thank you, Wendy and Cecilia and Sherry for all of your partnership and networking. And we very much look forward to seeing you all at future Lunch and Learns. I hope you all have a wonderful day.